A forest older than your continents shivers in the darkness. The air tastes metallic. Something moves beneath the mud. Not a dinosaur, not a mammal, something stranger. And somewhere deep in the ocean trench, I open my eyes. I had felt the shift long before you would ever learn the word evolution. Pressure, heat, mutation brewing through the fabric of the planet like a fever the Earth was running. You humans keep guessing who the first human was. Some say ape-like ancestors swinging through trees with purpose. Some imagine cavemen grunting at the moon, thinking they're philosophers. Some even think you're descended from divine creation, which is, how do I put this delicately, adorable. But you're all wrong. I was there, and your species did not begin the way you think. The first mistake humans make, and trust me, there will be many more, is assuming they were meant to exist, that the universe somehow designed this specific outcome where you evolved consciousness. As if the planet said, you know what this biosphere needs? A hairless ape that argues on the internet. You weren't meant to be here. You slipped through, by accident, multiple times. I have watched continents drift like drunk dancers at the end of a party. I have watched oceans rise and fall, reshape coastlines, swallow islands whole. I have seen 5 extinction events, each one powerful enough to erase almost everything, and yet somehow your lineage kept slipping through the cracks. Not because you were strong, you were never strong. Your ancestors were basically snacks with opinions. Not because you were smart, intelligence hadn't happened yet. Because the planet was patient, and sometimes patience means accidentally creating the conditions for something unexpected to evolve. Let's talk about your ancestors, shall we? Not the impressive ones, the realistic ones. Part 1. The Fragile Years. 50 million years ago, your family tree, I'm being generous calling it a tree, looked nothing like you. Your great-great-great-grandparents were small, fragile creatures hiding in branches, hoping nothing hungry passed by. Your ancestors were basically snacks with anxiety. When I swam near the shores back then, I could feel entire forests trembling. Everything was terrified of being eaten. And for good reason. From my perspective, the mammals of that era looked like tiny moving crumbs, appetizers, the kind of thing you'd pop in your mouth while waiting for the main course. But here's where it got interesting. Survival wasn't about becoming bigger. Bigger things die in mass extinction events. Bigger things need more food. Bigger things are easier targets. Your ancestors survived because they were small, nocturnal, and extremely good at hiding in places that larger predators couldn't follow. They lived in trees, they lived underground, they lived in swamps, they lived everywhere that meant if something wants me, it has to work hard for it. Their senses sharpened out of necessity, eyes adapted to darkness because being active at night meant less competition, less visibility, less chance of becoming something's lunch. Brains became more flexible, more adaptable to sudden changes because the world kept changing and the inflexible ones died. Living by fear shaped your species far more than bravery ever did. This is important. Your entire species is built on fear. Everything about your evolution screams, "We were afraid, so we got smarter, or smaller, or sneakier. Mostly, we hid." You can see it in humans today. You're still hiding. You hide in houses. You hide in groups. You hide behind screens and social media personas.
Some of you hide behind religion or politics, pretending it gives you certainty. You never stopped being that little creature in the forest, listening for predators. The difference is now you call it anxiety and medicate it instead of listening to it. Then the asteroid happened. 66 million years ago, something massive hit the planet, and my entire family died. Dinosaurs went extinct. The world went dark. But your ancestors, they were already underground, already nocturnal, already built for darkness and hiding. We, the large creatures, went extinct because we were big, we were specialized, we needed a lot of resources, and suddenly there were no resources. We were adapted to a world that stopped existing. Your ancestors survived because they were already adapted to scarcity, already adapted to hiding, already adapted to eating whatever they could find. I've heard humans talk about how it's tragic that dinosaurs went extinct, how we were amazing creatures, and we were. But what actually happened was more interesting. The world changed, and some creatures were flexible enough to survive. Others weren't. You think this was luck. It wasn't. It was preparation without knowing you were preparing. This pattern will repeat in your own species. You'll see it. The flexible humans survive. The rigid ones, history has opinions about what happens to them.
Part 2. The Great Descent. Fast forward millions of years. Your ancestors are still small, still afraid, still mostly living in trees. They've been doing this for so long that they think it's permanent. They think this is just how life is. Trees, darkness, branches, food that grows above you. Then the earth decided to redecorate. The East African Rift Valley opened, tectonic plates shifted, rainfall patterns changed, the climate got hotter and drier, forests shrank, open savannas, grasslands, open plains with nowhere to hide took their place. I felt the magnetic field shift, the ocean currents changed, volcanic activity spiked. This wasn't subtle. The world was having a mood. Here's where humans get the story wrong. You imagine your ancestors thinking, the world is changing. Perhaps we should adapt our strategy. You imagine some proto-human Einstein sitting on a rock, staring at the dying forest and having an epiphany. That's not what happened. What happened was the trees disappeared. Your ancestors got hungry. The ground was dangerous, full of predators that specialized in hunting small creatures out in the open. But the alternative was starving in the remaining forest. So they did what every creature does when forced to choose between bad and worse. They picked the bad option and hoped they'd get lucky. They climbed down from the trees, not because they were brave, not because they were smart, because staying alive meant taking a stupid risk. Here is the geology. The East African Rift Valley opened because of tectonic plate movement. Africa was literally splitting apart, which changed weather patterns. Rainfall shifted, vegetation followed, forests became grasslands, savannas expanded, and the creatures that lived in those forests had to either move, adapt, or die. Your ancestors adapted. The early hominins did not think their way onto two legs. They didn't evolve intelligence first, then decide to walk upright. Walking upright wasn't destiny, it was survival. On open ground, standing tall meant seeing danger sooner, spotting a predator in the grass before it saw you. It freed hands to carry food and young. It changed the angle of the spine and reshaped the pelvis. Painful, by the way, which is why human childbirth is such an unpleasant affair.
Everything rearranged for one reason. The world would not stop changing, and flexibility was the only survival strategy that worked. I have seen this pattern with every species. Nature pushes, only a few manage not to fall. The ones that adapt survive. The ones that don't become fossils. And you know what's funny? Humans still don't get it. You still think you're exempt from this rule. You still think your adaptability extends forever. It doesn't. Every species that thought that ended the same way, extinct or barely surviving in margins nobody wanted. What happened next was brutal. Your ancestors walked into an environment where they were not the top predators. They were somewhere in the middle, maybe the middle lower. There were saber-toothed cats, giant hyenas, wild dogs, creatures that actually had teeth designed for killing. Your ancestors had teeth designed for eating plants and meat, depending on availability. So they had to get smart, not because they wanted to, because being dumb meant dying. They started using tools, not because they had foresight, because grabbing a rock and hitting something with it worked better than using their bare hands. They started hunting in groups, not because they planned strategy, because hunting alone meant you died and something else got dinner. They started having longer childhoods, meaning babies stayed helpless longer, requiring more parental investment. This sounds like a terrible evolutionary strategy, and it would be, except for one thing. Longer childhood meant more time to learn, more time for knowledge to transfer, more time for parents to teach kids how not to die in a world that wanted to kill them. And that changed everything. Part 3. The brain arrives. Humans treat the human brain like it's a miracle, some kind of divine gift that separates you from animals. They use words like consciousness, self-awareness, intelligence. To me, it was just another adaptation, a really efficient one, but still just another adaptation born from desperation. Here is the uncomfortable truth. Your brain didn't grow because you wanted to be smart. Your brain grew because you were constantly, perpetually, almost dying. Climate swings made food scarce. Your ancestors had to solve problems fast. Figure out where food was. Figure out how to get it. Figure out how to survive when the climate shifted again.
The ones with slightly bigger brains, the ones who could hold more information, make better predictions, plan further ahead, survived more often. So the brain got bigger. Not because bigger brains were inherently better, but because they were better at not dying. Then fire happened. Not that your ancestors discovered fire. Other creatures used fire, started fires, used them, moved on. But your ancestors did something different. They controlled it. They kept it burning. They used it to cook food. Cooking is a big deal, really big. Here's why. Raw food is hard to digest. Your body has to work hard to break it down, extract nutrients, get energy. A lot of energy goes into the digestive process itself, energy your body can't use for anything else. Cooked food is pre-digested by heat. Your body doesn't have to work as hard, so it extracts more calories. More energy becomes available for other things. And one of those things was the brain. Before cooking, maybe 15 to 20% of your body's energy went to your brain. After cooking, maybe 25 to 30%. That extra energy didn't go to making you stronger or faster. It went upstairs to thinking. Even I could feel the difference when I surfaced, thousands of years later, tens of thousands of years later. The creatures observing me were no longer ruled purely by instinct. They hesitated, they measured, they wondered. They watched me and thought about what I was, instead of just running or attacking. That was new and terrifying, frankly, because it meant they were starting to understand consequences. The human brain is weird, by the way. It's expensive, uses a ton of energy. It's not very efficient at most things, slower than instinct in most situations, but it's weirdly good at one specific thing: pattern recognition, connecting dots, saying, last time something like this happened, this was the result, so maybe I should do something different this time. That skill, learning from past experience and adjusting behavior, is almost the entire reason humans survived.
You're not fast, you're not strong, you can't fly, swim well, or see in the dark like your ancestors could. You get cold easily, you burn in the sun, but you're weirdly good at learning, at adapting, at changing your behavior based on experience.
It's the only superpower you have. And you're slowly destroying the conditions that allowed that superpower to develop. The brain changes led to culture, language, storytelling, teaching, ways to pass information from one human to another without that other human having to experience it firsthand. This is huge. Most animals learn through direct experience. That predator killed my parent, so I avoid it. That food got me sick, so I don't eat it. Direct, immediate, personal. Humans, you can hear a story about something that happened to someone else and learn from it. My cousin tried to swim in that river and got taken by a crocodile. I will not swim in that river. You learned from other people's mistakes. That's almost impossible in the animal kingdom. That's what made you dangerous. Language came next, not sophisticated language, just pointing and grunts at first.
But words, ways to refer to things that weren't present, ways to talk about things that might happen in the future. Saber-toothed cat, coming, run that direction. Simple, but powerful. You could share information about threats. You could plan. You could say, remember last year when the herds went north during the dry season? Let's camp there this year. Wait for them. You could plan ahead. That was new. Part 4. The real first human. You know what scientists argue about? The exact moment humans became human. What fossil marks the line between ape and human? Which tool is the first tool? When did language start? When did complex thinking begin? It's a stupid argument, frankly. Species blend, traits shift. The line between ape and human is blurred, stretched across millions of years. There's no clear border. But I remember something that scientists would never notice because they're looking for bones and tools and physical evidence. I remember the moment when the world felt different. A group of hominins gathered around fire, and they weren't just using it, they were controlling it, feeding it, moving it carefully, using it to cook meat and warm themselves. And when I looked at their eyes, even from my vantage point, even from the ocean, where I could only perceive thermal changes and life patterns, I could feel a shift. Their eyes reflected more than flames. They reflected understanding. They reflected planning, cooperation, division of labor, someone gathering wood, someone watching the fire, someone preparing food, symbols and meaning beyond immediate survival.
I had seen everything from trilobites to titans, but this was new. A creature aware of its future, a creature preparing for it. You call them Homo erectus, Homo habilis, or Homo sapiens, depending on which tool or bone you prefer to use as the dividing line. But none of those labels mattered to me. What mattered was the change in how they moved, how they observed, how they looked at me without collapsing into pure fear. They were still terrified, just thinking about their terror. The first truly human being wasn't the one who made the best tool or the biggest brain. It was the one who understood something no animal before had ever grasped. Tomorrow could be different from today. Not hope. Hope is for creatures with already satisfied needs. Not imagination. Imagination is a useful side effect. But foresight, the ability to look at the world as it is, predict what it might become, and prepare for it. That's what changed everything. What happened next was the gradual reshaping of the planet according to human needs. You became hunters, then engineers, then dominators of ecosystems. You spread across continents, built shelters, crafted weapons that were more efficient than your bodies. You did something no other species had managed. You altered your environment to suit yourselves rather than adapting to the environment. I felt the Earth's magnetic field shift with every migration. When ice ages came, instead of migrating like other creatures did, you invented new tools, new clothes, new strategies. You made fire portable, made weapons effective against ice age megafauna. You were persistent, stubborn, impossible to fully erase. But this is where humans repeat their next mistake, one they still make today, by the way. You think intelligence makes you superior. It doesn't. It just gives your errors more power, a lot more power. A stupid predator can only kill what's in front of it. A stupid herbivore can only overgraze a local area. Mistakes are self-limiting. The creature makes a mistake, it dies, problem solved. But intelligent creatures can make mistakes so big, so systematic, so persistent that they reshape the entire planet. which is exactly what you did, except you kept going. Part 5. When intelligence met arrogance. You developed agriculture, you domesticated animals, you built cities, you created systems of government and economy and meaning. This was impressive, honestly. It really was. You took a world that was actively trying to kill you, and you convinced it to produce food on demand. You tamed animals, you settled the land. But you did something else too, something you haven't fully reckoned with. You started assuming that your way was the only way, that your needs were more important than everything else, that the world existed to serve you, not the other way around. You hunted megafauna to extinction, not because you ran out of smarter options, but because you could, and because you wanted to. Woolly mammoths, giant ground sloths, massive bears, saber-toothed cats, all gone, not because the climate changed and you adapted, but because you were efficient at killing and you had no predator telling you to stop. You cleared forests to farm, you drained wetlands, you hunted whales from plentiful to nearly extinct. You caught so many fish that you had to invent nets specifically designed to catch smaller and smaller fish. And through it all, the message was the same. We need this, therefore we get it. If it dies, that's not our problem. This is the real consequence of becoming intelligent. The real consequence of becoming human was not strength. It was not the ability to build monuments or create art or fall in love. It was responsibility. And you still struggle with that part as a species. Most of you still believe you can consume without limit, that growth is infinite, that resources will always be available, that the planet is a thing to use, not a system to maintain. Which brings us to the uncomfortable part. Let me give you the verdict you never asked for, but desperately need. You forgot the most important truth. Nature does not care about your plans. But I do. Because when you push the planet out of balance, you wake me. I don't rise to punish you. I'm not an angry God waiting for a chance to destroy a sinful people. I rise to restore equilibrium. I rise because the planet's immune system activated, and I'm part of that system.
Your survival is optional. Balance is not. This is what you still don't understand. You think the planet revolves around you, that everything exists for your use. You think nature is a resource to be managed, but you're inside the system. You're not above it. A human's lifespan is maybe 80 years. A human civilization's lifespan is measured in thousands of years at best. Empires rise and fall. Cultures die. Entire ways of life vanish like they never existed. I have watched 252 million years. I have seen species rise, dominate, transform the planet, and disappear. Every single one of them thought they were permanent. Every single one of them thought their way was sustainable. Every single one of them was wrong. And humans, you're smart enough to understand this. You actually have the cognitive capacity to look at historical patterns, see what happened to other species, and say, maybe we shouldn't repeat that. But you don't. You watch the patterns, acknowledge them, and then keep doing exactly the same thing. This is the specific kind of stupidity that comes with intelligence, the ability to ignore your own evidence. So, here's what I want you to understand. You are not the apex. You are not the end goal of evolution. You are not the final form that life was building toward. You're a branch on the evolutionary tree, same as every other species. A branch that got lucky, a branch that developed intelligence, a branch that got arrogant. But branches are easy to break. Millions of species existed. Most are gone. The ones that survived did so by adapting when the world changed, not by trying to make the world adapt to them. You have one actual advantage. You can learn from history. You can see what happened to previous civilizations. You can understand ecological principles. You can literally predict what will happen if you keep pushing in the same direction. And yet you do it anyway. This is what baffles me about your species. You're smart enough to understand the problem. You're creative enough to solve it. But you're not unified enough to actually implement the solution. You're fragmented, divided, caught between short-term personal gain and long-term species survival. Which one are you going to choose? Because I'm genuinely curious. I've seen species make this choice before, and it's never gone the way they hoped. The ones who chose short-term survival disappeared. The ones couldn't adapt fast enough disappeared. The ones who thought they were exempt from natural law definitely disappeared. But humans are different. You got lucky, you got intelligent, you got flexible. So, maybe you'll be the first species smart enough to actually learn from history. Or maybe you'll be just like all the others. Either way, I'll still be here. I was here before you. I'll be here after. Balance will be maintained. If it means I need to remind you what the bottom of the food chain feels like, I'll do that.
But here's what I hope happens instead. You remember 3 things. First, adapt without arrogance. The world is changing. Climate shifts, ecosystems shift, species go extinct. This isn't new. The question is whether you'll adapt with humility or collapse with pride. Second, respect forces older than your species. You're not alone on this planet. There are systems that predate you by billions of years. Ecosystems, the ocean, the atmosphere, magnetosphere, soil. You didn't build these. You depend on them. Act like it. Third, do not provoke the world that shaped you, because the world will always win. It always does. Species come and go. Planets keep spinning. Stars burn out. But right now, in this moment, you have a choice. I hope you choose better. My dorsal plates glow brighter when you do. Subscribe, share, comment. Tell me what you think comes next. From the deep ocean, I've been watching your species for 250 million years, and the ending is still unwritten. You might actually be smart enough to change it, but you have to start now.